Joel Haver, I hardly know her. And I'm already having the guy? What am I even having him for? A snack? Am I going to chew him out and spit him out like a piece of garbage that I ate by mistake? This guy, absolutely insane. Has sort of an insano vibe to it. One look in the eye of this guy, and you can tell he's got a bit of an insano style to the content he makes. Like sort of a mad scientist, crazy wacko genius type of energy. That is sort of the energy I'm trying to bring to all my interactions with people. I just like going crazy insano mode on it. I just love seeing them squirm. My favorite thing to do whenever I interact with people is making them squirm like a little worm in the dirt. Babe, I'm gonna have you squirm like a worm in the dirt after you're done with this video. You're gonna straight up be burrowing and sort of eating dirt and crap in the soil. That's about what I'm gonna do to you with this freaking mind freak of a video. And so I decided to watch all 9 of his crazy freaking movies. There's actually 10 Joel Haver movies. I think it said 9. There's 10. I watched all of them. And my expectations coming into this, before I saw any of the movies, were that I might be able to enjoy some of them, but I wouldn't really have much faith that they were good beyond the fact that I like Joel Haver's content. But my mind was changed by the end. That's the spoiler here. He does make some good movies. He also makes some movies that are bad. And, well, we're going to start with those because those are the first ones. Joel Haver sort of operates in a similar way to the Marvel Cinematic Universe in that there are several phases to the films that he's produced. Phase 1 of the sort of Joel universe is sort of the VHS phase. The first 2 are both filmed entirely on VHS. They're called We Are Sasquatch and 31 Days in Marshall, North Carolina. These both feel more like they're like a fun project than like a movie that's really trying to take itself seriously. We Are Sasquatch, it very much feels like it's this fun project that Joel is doing with like his community of friends and family and stuff. That's sort of what We Are Sasquatch feels like. I think that that's the sort of the priority of that movie. And I think it's sort of the same way with 31 Days in Marshall, North Carolina, because the basic premise of that movie is that they spent an amount of time in a town in North Carolina and they filmed a movie in that time. And that's like a fun project. You know, you want to include a bunch of different people from the town and stuff. And that's really neat. But like, obviously that's going to limit like what you could reasonably be expecting to do like narratively or whatever, and you sort of have to prioritize things other than like somebody's ability to actually communicate a character. I guess I'll go into talking about We Are Sasquatch. The very fact that this is a Sasquatch related film is kind of a benefit. It's kind of a plus in my opinion. A Sasquatch, just an absolute alpha dude. Just stinky, hairy, big old feet stomping in the mud, gooning like 24/7, never seen in public. That's great. I love it. It's sort of like an alternate universe, like mockumentary thing. Basically, we meet up with Sasquatches and they sort of just become part of society and just chill out and are normal. And they shave all their hair off and they just look like a regular people. They're not even tall at that point. Like they're just like regular sized. And Joel sort of builds a little world around that. And the world is like, I don't know. I mean, there's like some fun things here and there. There's like a Sasquatch game that they play and they spend like 20 minutes showing how the game works or whatever. They also have like this cool music that I think is very charming. There's like a dance competition. There's like a Sasquatch Jesus. There's plenty of charming little things in this. There's bits and pieces here where something is funny. But like overall, like I wouldn't say it's worth watching any more than like any videos he's made. I don't think the average person would be that entertained by this because they have no connection to it. But I feel like if you like Joel Haver, you could probably watch this and enjoy some elements of it, but like some of the bits don't work that well. I feel like a lot of this is born out of like this is sort of a community project and you want to give everybody a bit in it, and but also, you know, how old is he whenever he's making this? I think he's still like a teenager or something. I think that there is a Sasquatch that's fully haired in the opening sequence, and I think it's like just a Sasquatch costume or whatever. But obviously, there's a lot of limitations that putting everybody into a Sasquatch costume would bring up, okay? How do you differentiate these characters? You know, that's hot. It's going to be hot inside of a Sasquatch suit. So Joel sort of creates this world building reason as to why the Sasquatches don't have hair and are in fact just regular looking people with regular hair in regular places. And he's like, yeah, the state mandates that they shave all their hair off. That's weird that in this world where Sasquatches and humans coexist, that the government forces the Sasquatch to shave all of their hair. That seems a bit, I don't know, to me, seems a little bit oppressive. The main character dances in a cage, and it's like a metaphor for a Sasquatch being encaged by society. And at the end, everybody gets along. Like the racist anti-Sasquatch people are like, you know what, maybe Sasquatch, maybe you're actually really tall and have big feet and can stomp around, and maybe that ain't so bad. It's a fun little thing to watch if you're interested in it. It's kind of slow. Some of the bits don't work. But if you're interested in that movie with some Joel Haver funny bits, this movie's good. "31 Days in Marshall" is less good. It's a cute little project, and that's really it. I don't remember very much about it. There's the main character just comes into town and his car breaks down and he's stuck there for a bit. He's like running away from his dad or something. This is even slower than We Are Sasquatch, despite the fact it's a bit shorter, just because there's like not as many funny bits in it. But again, I think it's a cool thing that he did. I think that that's cool that he did that. But I also like don't think that it's good. If you're interested in seeing what, you know, he came up with, given the premise that this is a movie filmed within a town with just locals in that town and like a short period of time. If you're curious what that looks like, you can watch it. But like if you're not, like you're not gonna watch it and be convinced. You're not going to see the light and be like, this is actually great, because it's just not.
I'm kind of negative on these first two movies because, you know, I don't think that they're like particularly good or anything, but I think it's cool that people did it. I think it's good that these things exist, and it's cool that people put themselves out there, especially because a lot of people who probably have no interest beyond these movies of like acting or doing anything like that. It's cool that these people were in it. It's a cool thing to have done. I'm glad that these movies exist. And I think that there's like good moments in both of them. And I think that like every single person who chose to be in them was doing a pretty cool thing by doing that.
So now we enter phase 2. And phase 2 is made up of 2 movies. In 2018, I think, Joel Haver starts this project called I'm Going to Be Famous, which is actually a web series, but he edited it down a bit and uploaded it as a movie to his channel. But that's not the movie I'm talking about first, because before I'm Going to Be Famous wrapped up, he did another movie as a project within I'm Going to Be Famous called Taking a Little Time to Feel Sorry for Myself.
I need a little time to feel sorry for myself. I need a little time.
I think in terms of the continuity of Joel Haver's career,
The most notable thing about this movie is that it's scripted. Watching this, you kind of understand why a little bit. He moved away from scripting his movies. Writing dialogue is hard, and it's also hard to act out dialogue in a way that feels natural. It's a talent to be able to do that, and it's very difficult to do both of those things. And that comes across in some of the scenes. Some of it works fine. I think Joel is probably one of the better actors in this movie, because I think Joel knows exactly what's going on his character's head, in a way that I don't think he or the actors knew exactly what was going on in their characters' heads. And I think that makes certain scenes kind of stilted and awkward. That's not to say that it is totally bad. There are good things in this movie, and at the time, it was enough for me to be like, I was like really impressed. I was like, this is a good fucking movie. And since then, his movies that have come after that, as well as rewatching some of this movie, I've sort of realized I think I was a little bit too excited just because this movie is a big step up from his previous two. It's a very film studenty movie, and it was kind of the movie I was expecting for Joel to make. I really wasn't thinking that they would get much better than this. They do, but we're not going to talk about that in this video. I think the worst scene for the stilted dialogue that I was talking about is probably one of the first scenes in the movie. The movie starts off, I think, fairly decently. There's an interaction between Joel, his girlfriend, and a therapist, and that's a little bit weird. It's a little awkward. But then there's some stuff after that that's decent. And then there's a scene where his girlfriend is talking to her friend. Maybe I don't remember if they like get together or anything, but she's talking to her friend about breaking up with Joel's character. I think Joel's character's name is Buddy. I think Bud or something like that, which is a funny name to name a person. Joel emphasizes, and like a lot of the things that he makes, but also like his future movies, a lot of empathy. And I feel like that's a bit lacking in this scene in particular, in a way that almost makes it come off sort of incel-y. And whenever I say that, I don't mean that literally. It's more of a vibes thing, which is what most people mean nowadays anyway. It's a very sort of cynical image of like people, and it's not even that it is like incel-y. It's more just like this scene particularly, and how coolly the movie depicts his girlfriend is weird in this sort of like, yeah, people just secretly hate me sort of way. Every time anybody is engaging with me, it's purely cynically, or like nobody actually enjoys being around me. They're just pretending. They're just pretending that they enjoy being in my presence, which is something that he talks about in a future movie better, because it's being brought up to the actual surface as opposed to being this thing that's just simmering under the surface of the movie. The movie definitely lives up to its title. It does feel a little bit like it's feeling sorry for itself. I don't actually think he believes that. I don't even think that the movie supports it, but I do think that this one scene is weirdly incel-y, and it's also really badly done. And I think part of it is because of that lack of empathy for either of these characters. These characters don't really get a very fair shake. There's some nice shots in the movie. I don't really know how to discuss this stuff in that interesting of a way, just because I don't really find myself caring that much about like cinematography and things. Like, it's clear when it's bad. It's clear when something neat is on screen. I can tell that, or whenever there's like a neat composition. But like, I don't really have that much of a sense for these things. I think it looks good. In terms of like the sort of story and like theme, it's sort of about this character Bud and his inability to express himself. And it really, the same thing is kind of true of his girlfriend, but you just don't really see her perspective at all. It's about that. Like it's I mean, as much as it's about anything, I don't really know, but it's, you know, it's about like opening up or whatever. I don't feel like I have anything that insightful to say about it other than, like, the movie starts with Bud and his girlfriend. They're like my age, and they're in couples counseling, which is kind of a funny thing, but the way it's addressed isn't that funny. But Bud's in couples counseling with his girlfriend, and they're doing this sort of artificial expression of their, like, emotional state, and they're going ah 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 ah. And they're like kind of raising their voice at each other and just making a sound. It's like, that's I would not do that, dude. That'd be embarrassing. You're gonna make me do that in front of a girl? You're gonna embarrass me like that in front of my GF? It's emotion being expressed in this artificial environment, in this very sort of instrumental kind of way, where it's like, there's a function to this. And that's contrasted with the last scene of the movie. Spoilers for this movie. I don't think it'll affect your enjoyment or whatever if you decide to watch it. The movie ends with Joel. He's just in an elevator with some guy, and he just starts crying. And it's like a more raw emotional expression, and it's not in this controlled environment. And this is something, like, he's truly taking in the situation and, like, letting those feelings out or whatever. And it's really more of just like a contrast than anything. I think this is good, by the way. Like, I'm impressed with his ability to make a movie with, like, these themes and have things, it seems like, fold back in on themselves in a way that works. It's hard to, a lot of it's in execution, honestly. Like, this could have been executed better. And there are problems with the script itself. But, I mean, this is not bad. Like, he's not working from nothing. This is not shit. This is probably, I'm almost certain, in fact, this is probably better than most student films. Though I don't watch a lot of student films, because I'm not a fucking loser film student who has to watch student fucking films like an idiot. I mean, there are other things I think are a little weird with the script. Like, he does this Fight Club thing, and that's weird. It didn't make me mad, but it also wasn't, like, it didn't really add much. Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was cute. I thought Joel was cute in this one. Joel, you know what, buddy? I actually thought you looked pretty nice. Thought you looked pretty handsome. Just my opinion. So I'm Going to Be Famous is a series of projects that Joel Haver undertakes to become famous.
As a stand-up comedian, as an actor, as a rapper, as a performance artist, a critically acclaimed show at a New York City gallery.
This is too much spaghetti!
There's sort of a Nathan For You vibe. It's definitely what he's trying to do here, but Joel is not really capable enough to execute that as well as Nathan Fielder is. It's not to say it's bad. He's doing all of these things, and these are all instrumental actions that he's taking. He's crab walking across Central Park, and that is an action he is taking with the intention purely of, becoming famous. I don't know. Somebody's going to walk up to him and be like, dude, you're doing something weird in New York. Let me write a news story about you. But obviously he doesn't actually intend to get famous. Like, none of these would get him famous. So he's doing all these things, and really it's for this project that he's doing. And at the end, he comes in and he's like, who gives a crap? Because I just like making movies. And it's fine. Like, it's cool. There's some really good moments in it.
Tonight he sleeps with his dad, and he decides to ask his old man, how does real sex feel like?
Say that again. Tonight he sleeps with his dad. That's like incest. That's a pretty deep role.
It mentioned, I sleep with my dad.
Actually, you are curious about sex. You have a lot of knowledge about sex, but you never put it into practice.
There's one that nobody seems to know if it's real. It is very easy to believe that it is real. There's not a lot to indicate that it isn't. It's pretty great, but there's a lot of I think if you're interested in it, based on like the stuff I've said, which isn't that much, you know, he does like a weird art project. He does a big dance with people. I mean, like, it's cool. It's not like a huge step up or anything. It's just sort of like, okay, you can see this within the context of Joel Haver's movies. It's very meta, and you can see how like that goes forward, and you can see how like the themes of, you know, taking a little time to feel sorry for myself, you can see how those go forward. I feel like these two movies are in their own little phase because they're the transition into like Joel Haver and the movies that currently define him as a filmmaker. I'm Going to Be Famous is actually a pretty funny movie. Like, there's funny moments throughout. It's slow, but I think it would probably have been better to watch in its mini-series form. Because I think watching it as like a 2-hour movie is a very different experience than watching it and, you know, stopping every so often. I think I probably would have enjoyed it more if I watched it in its mini-series format. And I think that's the way that Joel prefers that people watch it. Not that that matters that much. It's funnier, I think, than I make it out to be. You know, just like scrolling back through, I think there's a bunch of stuff that I forgot that is pretty good. There's a bunch of good moments. The moment that I just put a couple minutes ago, like, I totally forgot that that was even in there. It's obviously not as good as something like, you know, Nathan For You, but of course it's not as good as Nathan For You. That's a silly comparison to make, given the context. This is very impressive for what it is. I think if you like Joel Haver, you'll like I'm Going to Be Famous, and I think if you like any of his like later movies, you'll probably like Taking a Little Time to Feel Sorry for Myself, even if it's not as good as those. I think whenever I was first watching through, I just really wanted to get to Pretend That You Love Me. I think that was where my head was at, and then, you know, I come across a movie that's like 2 hours long, where it has pacing issues, I think, if you watch it as a 2-hour movie. And so I think I was more critical than I really needed to be. It's the movies after these ones that I'm really going to say, hey, you should watch these. But that's for part 2. This is part 1. I split it into 2 parts because I couldn't fucking stand, like, I had to do it or else the video would never come out. See you in part 2. Subscribe for that. It might not be the very next video, but it will be probably the one after that, I'm guessing.